All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Do I have a motion for a flexible agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt a flexible agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Knighting and a second by Ms. Jansen. Any discussion? All right, we'll take public comment on approving a flexible agenda. Seeing as there is none, we will close public comment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, at this time, we would ask everyone to please stand, and Officer Mayers is going to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. All right, after much consideration, we have decided to take public comment over Zoom. Please be mindful this is a meeting to receive and relay information to the board and the public. This is not a time to point fingers or blame anyone, past or present. This is a time to work together to present and collaborate ideas that will have the least amount of impact on our students and families. So at this time, we would like to open it up to public comment. And this is, I think, if it's okay, and legal may chime in, I am good with public comment at the beginning and the end of the meeting being on anything on the agenda or anything within the purview of the school district. So at this time, we would like to open up public comment. Please make sure that you sign the paper and state your name for the record. Yes, and then just push the button.
Okay, you hear me?
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ashley Nielsen. I am a parent with several students in Douglas County School District, but today I'm here as a staff member. I'm a third grade teacher at Pinion Hills Elementary School, and I've taught in the district for 5 years. I am here because I know you have difficult decisions ahead of you, and I feel for you as a board. You have a lot of weight on your shoulders right now. You're being given lots of advice, hopefully encouragement, and many different ideas. One thing I want to make you aware of in my situation as a teacher in Douglas County School District is the value of our student support staff. As you're considering budget cuts and staff reductions, I would just like to bring it to your attention that this group of staff took reductions last year. They took reductions in hours and some in benefits as well. I'm talking about our instructional aides, our inclusive ed paras, our media techs, and so on. The list goes on. Our student support staff have the lowest wages in the district, and I believe they impact students in the biggest way. I know that at our school, aides work with the most difficult students, and they're on the front lines of education. It doesn't make sense to me that we can keep 10 or 15 of these employees for the cost of one vice principal. I don't want to call out any roles, but some of our higher paid employees, we could keep 10 or 15 people that are working right with students and making a big impact for students and teachers every day. Many of our aides, I'm thinking specifically of several kindergarten aides I know in the district, bring decades of experience and knowledge to our classrooms that can't be replaced with just a volunteer in the classroom. So as you consider your budget cuts, and the direction you'd like to request that the superintendent takes and the information you request, please consider protecting these affordable and amazing employees in our district. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear me? Yeah, good. Marty Swisher, Gardenville resident. Couple of things. First of all, Douglas County's never been in this position. And so this is an unfortunate situation to be in. Having said that, it's tempting to start to point fingers. Who's responsible for this? How'd this happen? But I've tried to communicate, at least to the board members and Mr. Alvarado, and hopefully to the community, that now is not the time to point fingers. We have to muster every bit of energy we have to address this issue, and to figure out how we're going to solve it within the next 2 years. So I'm calling on other community members to maybe put down the sabers, so to speak, that might be what people want to pick up and start swinging, and just say, let's pick up our tools that are going to help us fix this budget issue as a community, because this is a community issue. Yes.
This is his 3 minutes.
Mr.
you gotta
Burns, this
let
is
him-
his 3 minutes.
Hmm.
Can you please pause that?
Well, I'll address it being Mr. Burns asked a question. Absolutely not. What I'm saying is, I don't think it's productive, Mr. Burns, for me as an individual in this community to start blaming anyone for where we are right now. We are where we are. We have to move forward. Let's work together as a community and have all of the information that we can get to figure this out and move forward. That's what I'm saying. Does that make sense? Oh,
Okay, we're
all right.
board
Um,
members, this is his time to speak. We need to please stay silent.
I do have a question related to the school study report. On page 24 of that report is the Whitell High School, George Whitell High School and Middle School data for the funding for from 2022 to 2025. In that report, in the category of 2024, 2025, under purchased prop services, it says that there's a $2,888,929 expense, and it seems like a major outlier. It doesn't make sense to me what that is. So perhaps as you present on that, you can explain that if that's accurate. We'd want to know what it is. If it's a misprint or something like that, then it probably needs to be corrected if that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any online? All right, any further public comment? So you just write your name on that piece of paper and have a seat and make sure you state your name for the record.
My name is Molly Reagan. I'm a parent, a volunteer, and an employee of Douglas County School District. I'd like to point out there's nobody online because there's no link for today's meeting, which made it incredibly hard for parents and staff that were planning to attend today via the link. It's not available through the agenda.
Just a second, Molly.
Where? Okay.
Okay,
So
and
it
they,
isn't-
and just so those participants know that they can participate online, they can call in. Okay,
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the clarification.
yes.
Couldn't find it anywhere.
Thank you. Do we have anyone online that would like to speak? One, okay, thank you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, excellent. My name is Kevin Julian. My wife and I are residents of the county here, and our son goes to Pinion. One of the things that we have noticed, both through looking at the budget and conversation, is that we are losing attendance year after year. And so my concern is the school board working with the county to make Douglas County a little bit more family friendly so we get the enrollment back up to levels where it used to be. That was all I had. I don't know how to mute myself.
That's okay. Thank you for your comment. And we have another caller online.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Carolyn. I'm a parent of a student at Zephyr Cove Elementary School. I also went to Zephyr Cove Elementary School, and I just want to say that school is my daughter's favorite place to be, and every single person who works there goes above and beyond to make each one of these children just have a better life. And I just really hope that the board and everybody else is keeping us up at the lake in consideration so that we can keep the schools as good as they are. Despite living up here, I don't have a lot of money. I can't send my kid to some private school. I depend on her being able to get on the bus and see the lovely bus drivers and go to school and be taken care of so well. She has severe allergies, and they've been accommodating those. And I just appreciate Zephyr Cove Elementary and look forward to my daughter attending George Wattell High School in the future and getting to go to the same schools I did. I'm just here to just say how good of a job they're doing up here, and I just hope that it all can continue to be funded. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further callers? All right. Any further comments from the audience? All right. At this time, we will close public comment, but rest assured that we will have public comment again at the end of the meeting. All right. At this time, we are going to combine item 3 and 4 into one presentation for Mr. Alvarado.
Thank you, President Wagstaff. So I just have a statement to make before we get into the information. So today's meeting is discussion only. We are presenting information to the board and public. The intent is to provide the board with a well-rounded knowledge base before they have to make serious decisions regarding budget reductions. Making data-informed decisions has always been a goal of this board as we worked on not only trusting each other, but also building relationships and trying to change how we work together in comparison to what's happened in the past. Today is not a time to, just like a board president said, and as well as Mr. Swisher, it's not a time to cast blame on not any one person. Not one person is at fault for what we're dealing with today. Today is a day that we need to receive information, start brainstorming ideas, and then set a pathway forward on how we're going to not only plan for these reductions, but how we're also going to be transparent with information in the public. There are documents attached to today's board meeting. One is a cost study. That's not something we're going to go through in great detail. I know we had a question in public comment, and I want to address that question, but it's also explained at the very front page of that cost study. So in that cost study, there is two views of the data presented. One view is through general fund expenditures and inclusive education department expenditures. The other view is considered all funds view. When we consider all funds, at that point, we are taking in all the expenditures that are covered through grants, student nutrition, building and sites funds, as well as our capital projects. So to answer the question that was asked earlier in this meeting, the reason why you see that on page 24 is Wattell High School underwent a major renovation of their gym and locker rooms. And so we're showing the public and the board and providing this information in the spirit of transparency. So that way you know where money is going to. Not to point fingers, not to say we need to close this school, we need to close this program. Is to give everybody a well-rounded knowledge base on where our expenditures are going. And I will answer questions regarding this cost study by the board today. But I'm not going to go line by line, page by page through this report. This is an informational item for the public and for the board. And I know that the board reviewed all of this before the meeting. So once again, as a community, we need to come together and solve this problem in a respectful way, respect everybody's opinions. Every voice matters. We will not shut out or shut down any one person. We want to hear. We do not want to stifle the brainstorming process. Today is just the initial point where we're shedding light on a major financial issue that we are experiencing. And in future meetings, we will provide more detailed information. Okay, so at this point, Jared, if you don't mind putting up the declining enrollment and general fund analysis presentation. So as he prepares to bring up the presentation, Ms. Mitchell, if you don't mind having a seat up front. And then as we get started in this process, she's going to provide a definition on some of the information that is being shared. Tomorrow, so. No, below that. Yeah, the slideshow. Planning room. There you go. Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, if you can go to page 2. So we're going to just jump into the second page of this presentation. And so what this is a visual for the board to see the trends in declining enrollment. We went back to fiscal year 2022 all the way to present. So what you see is present day in 26 and 4 previous school years. And what you're going to see is you're going to see a decline from 5,221 students to present day where we have 4,691 students. The blue stands for full enrollment and the red is for weighted enrollment. And so enrollment is monitored through our grants and accountability department. And so Ms. Mitchell will provide a definition of what full enrollment is and what weighted enrollment is as it relates to PCFP funding, as well as the monitoring from Nevada Department of Education.
Okay, hi. So you'll hear the term weighted in a few different contexts tonight. When it's weighted funding, that's the pupil-centered funding plan. And that's that base allocation each student gets. But then the district gets a little more money for students who are English language learners, who have IEPs, who are on free and reduced lunch, or who are gifted and talented. So weighted funding is that additional allocation. Weighted enrollment is the difference you're seeing on this screen here. So full enrollment is like butts in seats. There is a student in that room that day. Weighted enrollment is changed a little bit to reflect pre-K. So a pre-K student is weighted at 0.6. So weighted is always a little bit lower because we have a couple pre-Ks and they're weighted at 0.6, whereas every other student is weighted at 1.
Any questions from the board regarding weighted or full enrollment?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward. So as part of this process, as we look at declining enrollment, we have to consider what the future is going to look like. As we know, Douglas County has become a retirement destination for people that are either planning for retirement or moving from out of state and trying to find a more affordable area to live in. And so I pulled the demographics that are on the census. So this is from the 2023 census. What you'll notice is we have a large, our median age is 54.2. I can tell you if we're operating off of our projections on expecting new children to attend Douglas County from a population that's 54.2 or older, that is unlikely. We're not guaranteed new students or increased birth rates, from that age forward. And I would say probably we can probably consider the age range from 40 to 49 all the way up to 80 plus. As a population in the county, we cannot expect future enrollment. And so seeing that we are, more than half of our population in the county, I can say that our enrollment figures are probably going to stay steady or decline at the same rate that they've been declining over the last 5 years. And we're averaging about 166 student decline over the past few years. And so I want to talk about the impact of that decline. So going to the next slide. Okay, so all of this information is based upon audited reports and audited actuals, and information was fact-checked by our grants department. And so going back to the bottom point there, 23-24 school year, we received base funding of $8,966 per student in base funding in that year. That particular year, we declined 250 students, and we incurred a loss of revenue at $2.2 million. And that was a major hit for 2023-24. Rolling into the very next school year, we had a biennium. So the legislation put together a new funding plan for all of the schools. They increased base funding up to $10,598. In that particular year, our decline of student population was a lot better than the prior year, but we still declined about 117 students with a total loss of revenue of just over $1.2 million. Fast forwarding it to this year, recently we were notified by the Nevada Department of Education that we were going to receive $230,000 in less revenue because of declining enrollment from Q1 this year comparing to Q1 last year. So that's just recent information we received. As we looked at our decline of enrollment for this year, we're currently declined about 165 students. Through the last biennium, they did increase base funding. Base funding went up to $10,622 per student. With a decline of 165, we anticipate a loss of revenue for this year at about $1.75 million. So in total, that's over $5 million in the matter of 3 years, which tells us this is one of the major issues that we're experiencing. When we have a loss of revenue, we can't afford to maintain staff. We can't afford rising costs for goods and services. And that's concerning because other districts are not in the same situation that we're in. We're declining at a faster rate than any other district in Nevada. Other districts may lose more students, but in comparison of their total student population, it's still not the same rate. So within the pupil-centered funding plan, they do have a declining enrollment provision. That declining enrollment provision is set at 5%. And so the State Department of Education looks at your enrollment from quarter to quarter. Douglas County School District was at 4.75% and missed the hold harmless declining enrollment provision by 0.25%. As I started collaborating with the State Department of Ed, talking to Deputy Superintendent Peterson over finance and interim Superintendent Steve Canavero, what I learned is there's no waiver, no exception process to this declining enrollment. I wrote a waiver. They looked at it and says, what is this? We don't consider waivers or exceptions in this. This is a hard set declining enrollment provision that's codified in law, and there's no change to it. So we've done some other things to help shed light on this because we're not the only district that are being penalized for this declining enrollment provision. So moving forward. So before I go into general fund trends, I'd like to give the board an opportunity to ask questions regarding declining enrollment. And this is not a new topic. I've talked to each of you individually about this in our one-to-ones, and you've had access to this information since it's been posted.
Any questions from the board? Ms. Miller?
Sorry for being late. When we talk about declining enrollment and we look over year, we do see some schools that are stable or at least showing a growth, and then we show others that are not. So it seems like our declining enrollment trends might be pockets versus, we see it overall as a district, but I think we can also isolate pockets that are showing more declining enrollment than others. Do you agree with that?
Yes, that's a true statement. There is pockets of declining enrollment and there's pockets of stability. And so what we do with enrollment figures and enrollment projections is that's how we plan staffing. The district has a staffing matrix that was developed in right around 2021. And that is a matrix that Mrs. Dwyer has used to implement and when we're planning on staffing allocations. Unfortunately, sometimes we have a decline in enrollment that happens over summer. So we allocate staff in the spring. We help our principals plan, either advertise, recruit, and hire employees. Then summer comes and we have another situation where we lose kids, and then coming back in to the school year, we have to reevaluate our enrollment at each of the school levels. Sometimes that causes frustration for our employees because if enrollment declines and we need to make a shift because we have an increase in a different grade level at a different school, then we have to do what's called a transfer. And we follow our collective bargaining process. We follow NRS. We coordinate with our associations in order to make those decisions. Once again, this is a staffing matrix. These decisions are not made arbitrarily. They're made off of a document that was developed by the district in 2021. It's currently in review by Mrs. Dwyer. She had a collaborative meeting with our administrators to get some of their ideas and get their input as leaders of our schools. And so there will be some changes that are made to that matrix. We still need to set time for her and I to meet and then solidify that and then communicate that out to the board and our leaders. So that kind of covers how declining enrollment works as it relates to staffing as well. Microphone.
The declining enrollment, how much is comparison from high school, middle school, and elementary?
That's a good question. Today is a big overview of our dilemma and the issues that we're facing. When we get to the future agenda items, at that point, we can place that on a future agenda item and you can direct that I prepare all of that information and present it to the board.
Without the numbers, were we talking the elementary? Because if I remember right, the high school wasn't losing a lot, but there was other ones. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it makes a difference in our projection of the future. If it's mostly, we've lost a lot of them in the elementary, that shows also we're going to continue to lose as they move up in the grades.
Yeah. So what we're seeing, if you don't want the specific details, I can kind of share the trends that we're seeing. In the high school, we typically have grade levels that are right around 400 students. What we're seeing enter the school district in kindergarten is just shy of 300 students, or right around 300 students. So we're graduating these large classes, but then bringing in classes that are lower, and that is one of the factors. There has been a pattern of declining enrollment at the high school, where we start out with a full high school, and then over time through the first quarter and second quarter, students choose either to go to homeschool, to go to parochial school, to go to private school. That is another pattern and trend that we've noticed. I can't give you an exact number, but that is something that's noticeable.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get in my head of what we're looking at for the future too. That'll make a difference in how we decide too. Thank you.
Well, can I speak? We've seen it in prior graphs that if you're graduating 500 kids and you're only accepting 300 kindergartners, yes, it's across the board, but there's your direct 200 students, right? So the seniors are graduating, they're no longer at the school. Kindergartners are a smaller demographic. So eventually, in theory, years from now, declining enrollment technically would level off. It just take a long time, because as your kindergarten class gets smaller, then you'd have to lose a substantial number of kindergartners after that in order to have declining enrollment. Does that make sense? So in this case, most of it is we're graduating X and we're only enrolling X, and the difference is almost exactly, or theoretically, the discrepancy. Does that make sense?
Well, when we look at, graduating large classes and then bringing in kinder classes that are lower, we all know that national birth rates are down. Birth rates in Nevada are down. So we can expect future enrollment not to be at the same level as prior enrollments. When I looked at the census data, there's a large margin of error, so we can't guarantee that those students or the new births still live in the county. But I shared in a previous meeting that this year was like the very first time we came within, 10 students of matching the birth rate on the census report. So if that pattern exists, then we can see enrollment at the kinder levels be between 270 to 300 students.
And even if the birth rate was positive, there'd be a 5-year delay because they won't be kindergartners till they're 5 or 6, as the case may be.
Okay, any other enrollment questions? Okay, let's go forward with general fund. So in the next slide here, I wanted to show you 5 years of revenue. Once again, 2026 is current year, and then we have 4 preceding school years. What you'll see here is that we're barely surpassing our revenue from the 2022 fiscal year. That's concerning. We've heard from our legislature that they've given a historic investment to education. Unfortunately, we have not seen new revenue come into Douglas County School District, and which tells me there's things within our pupil-centered funding plan that are not working for us as a rural school district. And it's the same for many, many other rural school districts, if not all of them. And so when we're operating a school district with rising costs over the period of 5 years, and that's for goods and services, maintaining your expenditures is not possible. So in my review of the 4 years, we've increased revenue by 2% from fiscal year 22 to 26. However, our expenditures have exceeded 13%. So right now, our expenditures, which we'll see in the next slide, are outpacing our revenue. And that's one of the driving factors for the reason for spending our ending fund balance. And that's going to show up in a future slide here. So in this graph, green is the revenue. You'll notice in fiscal year 22, we had more revenue than expenditures. The red is expenditures, and you'll see the dotted red line climb. And then you'll see the revenue, which is the dotted blue line, kind of stay steady, which shows just a 2% increase in revenue. But once again, those expenditures have shot up 13%, which is outpacing our revenue. Before I go forward, do we have questions?
Yeah, can you explain the giant discrepancy from 24 to 23 in the expenditures? It takes a pretty big leap there and then levels off.
We're going to get into factors pretty soon here. Yeah. Go to the next slide. Oh, go back one. Is that? Okay, sorry, forward. Page 8. There it is. So here are the increased expenditures, right? So if we look over the 4-year time period, extracurricular costs have increased by 20.5%. Vocational education has increased by 32%. Student support has increased by 38.9%. Instructional staff support increased by 27.8%. General administrative costs have increased by 97%. School administration has increased by 23. Central services has increased by 19.4. Operations and maintenance increased by 24.5, and student transportation has increased by 16.7%. So with all of those rising costs, the next set of slides, I dive deep, well, not too deep, but I give you an overview of what are in those funds that are costing us money. So for extracurricular, this is where we pay athletics and co-curricular stipends. For vocational, this is where we pay for CTE vocational teachers and their discretionary budget. For student support, we pay counselors, nurses, social workers, our specialists, which are deans, our TOSAs, could be learning strategists, and also our AGPM is paid out of student support. The next item is instructional staff support. That's where we pay for the educational services department. We pay for our MTSS administrator, which is half-time, a secretary position for that department, our library staff across the district, professional development center is also paid for out of that fund. Go to 10. Okay, the general administrative category. This is where the superintendent is paid out of. Our front desk position, our family engagement and communications position is paid out of this budget. School administration costs, that's where we pay for principals, vice principals, our CTE administrator, our athletics administrator, and secretaries at each of the school sites. Then central services, this is where the business department is paid out of the human resource department, our IT department, and our warehouse employees. The last two categories here for operations and maintenance, this is where we pay custodians, our grounds maintenance, and our supervisors in that department. And then last but not least, student transportation. This is where we pay drivers, our vehicle maintenance staff, our secretaries, and our supervisors from that department. So that kind of gives you a breakdown of those categories, what we pay out of those categories, and then what the increased expenditures that we incurred from the last 4 fiscal years. Any questions?
So I have a question about the PDC funding. Was that ever grant-based, or is that always come out of the general fund?
Yeah, so some comes out of general fund, very minimal. A lot of it comes out of title grants. And so if you want more details of exactly how much comes out of the general fund, then we can add that to the list and I could bring that to the board.
That would be helpful,
Hmm.
because I had a question about when we pull our teachers out for professional development and we have to pay for subs, where does the sub fee come from? Could we use other professional development trainers for those sub positions? I'm just trying to figure out how we can reduce some kind of cost in regards to when we pull our teachers out and we have to put in subs, we have to pay for the teachers and pay for the subs and pay for the PDC. So I'm just trying to figure out how to minimize that impact.
That's a great question. I have that on the list.
Does anybody else have questions? Okay. Ms. Knighting?
I was just going to ask, in the general administrative increase, 97%, is there a reason for such a huge increase in that one?
Yeah, so 2 positions were placed into that fund. That would be the front desk as well as the family engagement and communications position.
Okay. And is there any way to know how many of the employees fit into each of these funds?
Yes, I can give you a full detailed account of the number of employees for each.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Burns?
I'm sure this is gonna be coming up, if I remember, there's, you can stay 16.7% from the past, but specifically that amount, but you're gonna get to the point to where, each one of them, what percentage of the pie? Am I correct? In other words, the 97%, how much is that of our whole budget? I think if I remember right, there's a graph on that, right? Or a,
We have a budget pie that is posted
Yeah.
on our district website, but that covers all staff. So it doesn't cover just one category within our budget. If you want me to break that down on what percentage each of these categories is, based upon all of those expenditures combined, I can do that.
yeah, I'm just thinking, if 2 people, you can't cut one, if there's two people work, but if you've got 800, just throwing a number out, you have 800, that's a different story. So without knowing which, per se, each department or each budget, because they're not all the same, correct?
Correct.
That's what I'm looking for.
Any other questions? Ms. Miller?
In regards to the school administration, we increased by 23%. How many of those were newer positions added? Or was it just inflation and salaries? Just normal raises?
So from that time period to present day, all employees received approximately 16% increase. Plus PERS went up 2 times. So I would say that the increase is based primarily on salary and benefits.
Keep going.
Okay, so here is a chart that shows our ending fund balance actuals, with the exception to fiscal year 25, which is our anticipated audit finding. And then fiscal year 26, which is a projected amount. And so what you'll notice is the district maintained a healthy fund balance, in 22, 23. And then with the rising expenditures, that ending fund balance from 23 to 24 was chopped, by 50, 60%. And then we've continued on that pattern where we anticipate the audit that's presented to the board in December to show a negative 1.1 million ending fund balance. And then looking at this year, what we're projecting is most likely to be right around the negative 5 million. And you will receive a presentation at the regular board meeting in December in which Sue presents to you our December amendment. And she will be presenting for the first time in her 40-something years a negative ending fund balance to show you exactly where we're at for this school year.
So if we don't do anything, we're looking at in 2027 being closer to 10, correct?
Based on the patterns that we're seeing,
Right. Yes,
correct. It's just going to compound year after year.
right.
Yeah.
We don't want that.
Okay, going to the next slide. This is once again another way to look at our ending fund balance. And this is called the net change. So you can see in 2022, we actually built up our ending fund balance by over $2 million. However, in 2023, that's the year we started spending ending fund balance. And then we've spent ending fund balance, for 3 previous fiscal years and also this fiscal year. So it just shows a pattern of, the rising cost. Okay, going to the next slide. This is some of the factors for our financial challenges. And so we do a transfer from the general fund into these other funds And one of them being the self-insured program. And so on an annual basis, we have taken $1 million from the general fund and plugged it in as revenue for the self-insurance program. Inclusive education, the last school year, we had taken a $1.2 million from the general fund and placed that into the inclusive education fund to cover the cost for that program. In transportation, we've taken $1.1 million from the general fund, once again from last year, and placed that into the transportation account to cover costs for transportation. To break down that $1.1 million for transportation, about 700,000 of that went to our regular program and 400,000 went to our inclusive education transportation services. So over declining enrollment, I've talked about, the loss of revenue that exceeds $5 million in 3 fiscal years. Us missing out on the hold harmless provision by 0.25%. And then the recent loss of revenue at $230,000 back to Nevada Department of Education. And if we look at that figure multiplied over 4 quarters, we anticipate, $1 million loss in this year. And what I learned through that loss of revenue, it doesn't go into Nevada Department of Education's account. It goes into the education stabilization account for the state of Nevada, which has a high dollar amount, approximately $700 million. And I know it's the state's intent to build that fund to about $1.2 billion. Collective bargaining, for all employees to give a 1% increase in salary, that costs the district about $500,000. So just reviewing our last collective bargaining cycle for years 23 and 24, the 11% increase to all employees and 4% increase to all employees, that compounds over year after year. That's a permanent increase that we have to be able to afford year after year after year once that is negotiated and approved by the board.
Superintendent Alvarado, if a 1% cost is 500,000, the next line at 11% and 4%, is that 7.5 million?
Yeah, so in fiscal year, so in the 23-24 year, the 11% is about 5.5 million. Buried next year, 4%, that's $2 million added to the 5.5. So it's 7.5 million ongoing.
And the 4% is compounded on the 11, correct? Because the raise is there and then it's additional.
Correct, it's added.
So there's 7, okay.
Yeah, plus the PERS increase, right? So we had the PERS increase and we covered the PERS increase in the 23 biennium and the 25 biennium. So going to our action steps, here are some things that we've done. This doesn't encompass every action that we've taken, but I've worked hard to advocate for the change in the declining enrollment provision. I've communicated to the governor's office with Senator Titus to really shed light on how there's unintended consequences with this provision and provided a presentation. I was invited to the Interim Finance Committee on Monday, in which I presented with Washoe and Clark. I did learn through Washoe's presentation that they did receive $124 million new dollars in revenue in that last biennium. And as you see in our revenue, we did not receive the same amount of money that some of the larger districts. Once again, they have a lot more students. When you add up that many students times the base, you get a lot more revenue. And so I've also informed our collective bargaining associations and our Board of Education about anticipated audit findings, hence our special meeting today. And I have started the collaboration process with our certified and classified leaders, as well as our association leaders in our district cabinet. In the fiscal year 25, last school year, we began reducing staff to align with enrollment. This is not a fun process. Nobody wants to eliminate positions. We don't want to RIF people. So last year, we did a salary schedule matrix in which we identified having over 40 employees within 3 to 5 years of retirement. And we reduced a total of 47 positions. And the intent was to do a phased reduction plan. Unfortunately, that 47 position reduction did not have an impact that we thought it would have. You would think that'd make a major dent, but unfortunately, we're in the position we're in where we still spent more money in the second half of the year and ended up with a negative balance. So this reduction process to align with enrollment is an annual process that we will continue to examine our enrollment, allocate based upon our projections, and then make minor tweaks as we come into the new year. The way it works for classified staff, with lack of funds, we're able to eliminate classified staff through the course of a school year with 2-week notice. With our certified staff, they're under contract for the entire school year. There's no exceptions or no process within NRS that allows us to eliminate a certified position through the course of the year. So we have to be very strategic on how we provide allocations and be very conservative in that allocation, and then plan to hire staff that we need at the beginning of the year so that way we are not overstaffed. So we've been working with the Nevada Department of Education and Department of Taxation. We issued a memo to them over summer informing them that we were spending our ending fund balance. There is no penalty in the state of Nevada for spending your ending fund balance. But at the point you go into the negative, that's where you're called to a meeting with the subcommittee from the Department of Taxation, and you have to provide rationale and provide information on the work that you're doing to get back into the black, into the positive. And so that's really all dependent on the audit finding being presented to the board, being acknowledged and approved. And then the next step in that process is to share that audit finding with the Department of Taxation. Their next subcommittee meeting is December 10th. If we are not invited to that meeting, we will have to wait until early February to get invited to their next quarterly meeting, in which they will make a decision on our financial status. In conversation with them, there is a likelihood that we may be declared in severe financial emergency. There's a whole NRS around that, and I will work with legal counsel to navigate that. We've already had initial conversations, and there will be some guidance memos that are shared with the board in the near future. We're planning special board meetings to deliver this information to the board and to the public and build a pathway for data-informed decision-making. I think it's important we isolate this to special meetings. When we add this on top of a regular meeting, I feel like we're doing a disservice to you as trustees. I want you to be truly focused and attentive to just the budget stuff in an isolated meeting. Any questions or any thoughts about the action steps so far? And once again, this does not encompass everything. We did a 10-year general fund analysis, and then we've condensed today's presentation to focus on the last 4 years, because it doesn't make sense for us to look 10 years ago when we're trying to tackle a recent issue.
Mr. Burns.
I just want to save out some information in case there's some here that don't realize or know, but it's a reminder if they do, that at one point, Douglas County was one of the best in funding schools because it came directly from the county, directly to the schools. And the state changed that, the legislature, and I don't know which year, but they changed that. And when they changed that, we lost a lot of money in the county. And now they distribute all the money. And that's where we lost. And if you have a sense of that funding is there and you don't act on that change, or at least try to understand that change and what you're losing, this is what happens. You can get in trouble over that.
Yeah, so to educate the community and the board and our employees regarding the pupil-centered funded plan, I'm working with our communications person, Haley Sebahar, and we've developed this series of Did You Know communications. Topic 1 was sent to the whole school community last night regarding PCFP, and sharing information how it replaced the Nevada plan. But also, if you look at the very bottom of that message, we do highlight that it impacts the rural districts differently than it impacts our urban districts in the state. And so we will issue the Did You Know messages on a weekly basis on Wednesday. I plan to do a pre-board meeting message, which I sent last night, and I will do a post-board meeting message just to ensure we're getting information out to our school community, and they're up to, they can be as educated as they want to be as we work through this process.
I just have a question. You talked about classified and certified staff, but what about our district administration and our site administration? Are they under contract or what's that?
It depends if they're certified or classified. So
Okay.
a principal and a vice principal will be certified.
Right.
If we look at our classified leaders, our director of transportation, our director of facilities,
Mhm.
those would all be classified leader positions.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
Okay, next steps. We will plan future board meetings and focused around the future agenda items that the board requests today. We will have an audit finding report to the board. We want that to happen on December 3rd at a special meeting. And then once that happens, I will share that finding report with Department of Education as well as Department of Taxation. And I'm hoping to be invited to that December 10th meeting. So that way I can bring information back to our December regular meeting. And then I will continue collaboration with our certified classified leaders and our associations. So that way we can brainstorm solutions and bring that information to the board at a future meeting for decision making. Okay. So that concludes really the global overview of what's happening with our ending fund balance and our general fund here in the district. Is there any questions regarding, any of the information that I presented today to you? And or is there any questions regarding the cost study?
Any questions from the board? I think we're all just still taking it in.
Would you like to take a recess?
Yeah, let's take a 10-minute recess. Just to give us a few minutes. All right. Okay. All right, we will call this meeting back from recess. And if Mr. Alvarado, does that conclude your presentations?
That concludes the presentation. Once again, I'm not presenting the cost study. That's
Right.
information for
No,
the board
that,
and the
yeah,
public.
we did
because
receive that.
Everyone wants transparency and financial
Mhm.
information, and we're putting it out there for everyone to see and analyze on their own.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So at this time, I'm going to shift. We're gonna go to public comment. I would love to hear from people online and people in the audience before we make any decisions on future agenda items. I would love to hear from our constituents. So at this time, we will open public comment. And please make sure that you write your name on
sure.
the list. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Mary Porter, and I really appreciated your information, but I am coming from a position where I don't really know basics anyway. So let me just ask a couple of questions from your sheet. On the expenditure detail sheet, for example, I'm just picking out the school administration increased by 23%. Now, are there hard dollar figures that you can provide us with? Because the 23% might be a lot, and the 97% might be like, $5 to 10. So I wondered if we could find that out. And then the other thing is on the question of, let me find the page. I'm sorry. Take this time. Yes. On ending fund balance page. For example, the 2024 scale there, does that mean that in 2024, for example, there was a reduction of $6,000 from some fund? And if so, how much money is in that fund? And or am I misunderstanding the concept? Because if it was like we owed $6,000 at that time, who else paid it? But I don't think that's it. I think it just means that's the reduction that year, and I wondered what the fund balance was. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whoops, I'll find my paper here.
I can provide some information to the board really quick.
That would be great. Thank you.
So school administration, we have in our budget, $5,782,000 that we have budgeted for school administration for this year. Going to ending fund balance 2024, our ending fund balance was $4,169,953.
Thank you. Ms. Blomstrom, did you want to make public comment?
I did.
Okay.
Cheryl Blomstrom for the record. First, thank you for sitting here. This is a hard job.
Can I ask you to pause for just a minute?
Of course.
And we'll wait for Ms. Jansen to come
Of
back.
course.
All right, thank you.
Did it snow at Lake Tahoe today?
Well,
So currently, we have about $6.6 million that we transfer from general fund into other obligations. I did detail in that presentation, $1 million going to insurance,
right.
1.2 million to inclusive education, 1.1 million going to transportation. And so those are encroachments, but also we've taken from general fund to pay for salaries and benefits as well.
Right. Just a question that I have regarding that. Now, at last month's board meeting, we discussed making that transfer for insurance a permanent, like that just increased that budget line item in a permanent solution instead of every year trying to catch up, correct?
Yes. So what that does is pull funds from the accounts that the employees are funded from.
Okay.
So if an
Right.
employee is funded from a grant,
Right.
We would pull those benefits from that grant to cover that for that employee.
Okay.
So it spreads it evenly across all funds rather than coming directly from the general fund.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, Ms. Bloomstrom.
Thank you very much, Cheryl Blumstrom, for the record. I appreciate you all sitting here and absorbing what is going to be the beginning of a really long road. And it's going to be a bumpy road and it's going to be a hard road. And you have decisions in front of you that are going to be unpleasant across the board. I hope you understand that the community will stand with you if the community knows it needs to stand with you. And so I suggested this to Frankie and I will suggest it to all of you. Be radically transparent. Be like, overshare, because people won't be surprised then. And when people are surprised, they react badly. It's like when your kids come home late and you were expecting them and you were worried. You probably weren't as kind to them when they got home. At any rate, I am looking forward to these meetings. They present an opportunity for me to share my thoughts, to share what I know about school districts, what I know about this district in particular. For instance, I know that capital projects funds, talking about the Wattel funding, those are walled off. You cannot transfer them between operating funds and capital funds. That's not allowed by law. I know that because I chaired the last school bond reissue that we did in 2008. And that was a question that came up all the time. Well, what about this thing and what about that thing? And like, those are operating. We cannot do that. It's not okay. So my 2 cents for what it's worth, or maybe 5 cents because inflation. Anyway, thank you all very much for your service. It's a hard thing. I am grateful that you are standing to do this work. You're not avoiding it. You're going to face it head on, and I think the county will be better for that, and the community will stand with you when they understand how important it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any online? Okay. Ms. Ensign.
I'm Christine Ensign, a teacher at Douglas High School, for the record. There's so many things we could talk about, but I'll pick one since we don't have a ton of time. I very much appreciate seeing this conversation about categories of spending, percents, dollar amounts. It's really helpful to start painting the picture of the complex situation that is the budget and everything that goes into it. And I found it really informative and helpful. I wanted to speak to one thing that I think is sometimes misunderstood and just offer maybe another point of view. When we say something like, the 1% cost, a 1% raise to all employees in the district costs $500,000 roughly, a little bit less than that. Certainly we go, oh my goodness, an 11% raise and then a 4% raise after that is, 15 compounded a little bit more than that. That's a huge amount of money, which you would never be able to afford if you weren't getting more money. But I just want to kind of remind people where we were when you're operating under a fully funded budget that actually has millions of excess for a long time, you're good to go. If you then get 10% and 5% more money, every aspect of the budget, every category could go up by that amount and you're fine. You have no problem whatsoever. If then you have declining enrollment, you lose a certain percentage and every aspect of the budget has to go down by that amount, right? So when we look at things like what does it cost, it really didn't cost anything to give the raise that we gave because we got that much money more. In fact, if we hadn't given that kind of a raise, we would be taking more money from teachers because every aspect of the budget could go up by 15% with no cost to anyone because we were getting 15% more money. When we decline enrollment, then you have to shrink. It just so happens that DCPEA members, I don't have the numbers for the whole, all the employees, but in DCPEA, In the last 2 years, based on the numbers, Mr. Alvarado, that you gave us, we lost 7.2% of our students, which means then you need to decline everything by 7.2%. DCPA has lost 9%. So you've already taken care of it. So we have lost 31 members in the last 2 years. That's 9%. So we have actually shrunk accordingly. So when you look sometimes at these numbers, you go, oh my gosh, that's so much money. You have to look at the numbers and the proportions, and actually we've shrunk accordingly. But what I loved seeing today was some of these other areas where you go, whoa, wait a minute. We went up by 15. We're supposed to go down by another 9 or, over a couple of years, more than that. And it hasn't happened in some of these other areas. And then if we have a lag in decline, you've got somebody that makes 100,000 over 5 years, you've lost another 500,000 if you're waiting to kind of decline proportionally. I'm out of time. There's so much more we could say, but thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that if Ms. Ensign, if you have more that you would like to say, I would love to hear.
So I don't want to battle.
Well, so let's do this before go ahead and have a seat. We're going to take our caller online and then we'll come back.
Okay.
They dropped off. So caller online, if you want to come back, we would love to hear from you. Okay, so go ahead, Ms. Ensign.
So I think it makes me very happy to hear the conversations that we're hearing right now. But I think that, when you look at money and costs, it's so important to look at numbers and at proportions at the same time. But even if you go, we had grant funded positions that are no longer grant funded that we kept. And you go, oh, it's a handful, maybe it's 5 positions. I'm totally making something up. This is not correct. But it's 5 positions, maybe they make 75,000 a year. Okay, what does that translate to? Well, if you've kept them for the last 5 years and they were never in the budget originally, these things compound to hundreds of thousands of dollars very quickly. But I think it's important to keep in mind, like the narrative, there's been a narrative sometimes that, oh, it's the teacher paying raises. It really isn't. It really isn't. We had the money to give that kind of a raise. If we hadn't given it, would be taking away from people who I would say have earned it for many years and who still pretty much can't afford to buy a house here. If we then decline in enrollment, yes, we have to decline proportionally. So it's that kind of like, where have we not declined? And yes, percentage-wise and dollar-wise, and what do we need to do about it? And what areas can't you decline? I know special education is, by law, something that we have to fund. So if that's gone up, when it really could have gone up by 15 and then needed to go down by 9, whoa, then we're in a lot of trouble, and those are some things that need to be looked at. But I think rather than babble about a lot of things, I would just add perhaps that if we're going to make good decisions moving forward, we need to know where we are. And I fully agree with not pointing fingers and blame, but that's different from we need to know how we got here. And it's important to understand, like if we could look more carefully at teacher money, all the analysis we've done, you couldn't say that teacher money has contributed more than less than $1 million to the 10.5 million underspend, like at the absolute most. And that's mostly because we had that extra increase on salaries for people at the low end of the salary schedule that was beyond the initial raise that we were given. It's important to kind of get this stuff figured out and really think about where you need to reduce and what you value, and have your practice align with your values. And I know you're in a hard place, and I know it's like we've got to sweep up the trash, but it's also important to go, these are our priorities. We want to align with them, and we want to make decisions that align with what we actually say we care about. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. No more, we have no callers online. Okay, any further public comment from the audience? All right, then we will close public comment, if any. Okay, well, let's take it. We're not closing public comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Colleen Julian. I'm a parent, a volunteer, and a substitute for this district. I'd like to see the budget trimmed from the top before it's trimmed on the school level. I see day-to-day the staff that works with the kids, and they're amazing. And I think that it's important to preserve those jobs. I'm aware that this meeting is to focus on how to fix the current situation, but it's just as important to us that we stop this spiral. If we don't fix this and stop it, we will just be here in another year, another year, and another year. There's a strong correlation between adequate funding and student success. If DCSD becomes even less desirable, aside from Douglas County becoming a retirement community and very expensive to live in, more students will just move away or find alternative education like homeschooling. How do we stop this? I understand that it's important to figure out how to become whole again, but we can't do that if we're in a spiral. So those are my comments. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you very much. Okay, another one online.
Hi, my name is James Jackson, parent of multiple students in Douglas County School District, including Prairie Jackson, the student representative. I think it would be possibly helpful if the district was able to get some information regarding the percentage increases of other counties across the state, of the percentage of increase of their expenditures over that same period from fiscal year 2022 through 2025, and compare that to Douglas County's expenditure increase. I think that at the very least would help put in perspective if we're looking at an expenditure increase problem or solely a lack of a funding increase problem. My second comment would be that I know there's a lot of people who are listening and concerned about this issue. I think that speaking to your political representatives for the state, your state representative and state senator about this issue, specifically because we are experiencing funding problems due to the per pupil funding methodology that's been implemented. Not that that's necessarily going to get anybody anywhere, but it certainly helps better than arguing over where we need to cut. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more online?
Yeah, this is Jeremy Height, teacher and parent within the district. I'd just like to point out that for some of us teachers, we actually took a pay cut this year, myself included, because of salary stagnation, because of increased costs of healthcare, and because of the legislative changeover from percentage-wise of teacher funding. I actually took a pay cut. I do not see many other people in this district saying they're taking pay cuts, especially at the administrative level. I've seen teachers leave this district because of money. I've seen parents take their kids out because they have substitute teachers in the classroom instead of licensed teachers. I've never seen a kid get pulled out of class and go to a private school because there wasn't a vice principal at a school. So we need to be very careful about how we're using our funding so that we keep people within this district, whether it's the great teachers we have or the great parents and great students we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more online? Okay, we have no more online and no more in. Yes, public comment is still open if you'd like to. Nope, that's fine. Just make sure that you put your name on the paper and state your name for the record. Thank you.
Do you need the phone number? Okay.
That's okay.
I was just wondering if Mr. Alvarado was talking about
Could you
the
state
Make,
your-
yeah, make
Oh,
sure you
I'm
state
sorry.
your name for the record.
the microphone. There you go.
John Tobias. I work for the district buildings maintenance. I just had a question on the Department of Taxation. Could you guys expand on that as far as what happens if with their decision? Is it something the state will come in and like take over the district? Or I guess, I don't know, just some more expanding on that is kind of what I had some questions on. not a good speaker, but
No worries at all.
so that's all. Thanks.
Mr. Alvarado?
Yes, I can explain that. So, you know, only the subcommittee can make a recommendation to the Department of Taxation to place us in a severe financial emergency. In my review of the NRS requirements, once again, I'm not an attorney, but I will rely on our attorney to provide guidance to the board through a legal guidance memo. There were two factors that I felt we met in that NRS that would have them make a recommendation to the Department of Taxation to put us in what's called receivership. We won't know really what the penalty is or what type of oversight that they will assign us through this until we get to the subcommittee and get a finding from the Department of Taxation. The earliest we can meet with them is December 10th. At the latest we would meet with them is February 10th. That's why we pushed up the audit finding report, which was planned for the regular board meeting in December. We've asked our auditor to come to a special meeting on December 3rd to try to meet the Department of Taxation's timelines.
So I have a question on that. If we are obviously going to be declared as a emergency, what did you call it? Financial.
Severe financial
Thank you.
emergency.
Is it guaranteed that we will go into a receivership? Or because we're taking these steps and trying to solve the problem ourselves, is there a even small possibility that we will not go into receivership?
So they will determine the level of oversight after we go to the subcommittee meeting, which I believe will be set up like an interview style, where they interview district administration, ask us what our plan is, what the work that we're doing. And then they make their decision after that. So there's no way for me to anticipate what their decision is going to be.
All right. Thank you for answering those questions.
Wh-
Did
wh-
you?
When we talked to the Department of Taxation last week, Ms. Estes and I, they said, you have a revenue issue, talk to the governor's office. That was the advice they provided to us.
Okay. Pass the book. Did that answer your question? Okay. Nope, that's good. Did you have another question? Okay. All right. Okay. Ms. Miller.
So when they were to meet with you, Superintendent Alvarado, would we as trustees be able to just sit in on that meeting, or is that something that would just be done with the district office administration?
Yeah, if the board was allowed to sit, we would start with our trustee officers first. And I don't know. We'll have to wait until we receive an invitation from them. I'm sure there's some type of restrictions.
Okay, I just figured, we're trying. So just being able to be part of that transparency would be good for our community.
Agreed. All right. Any further public comment? All right, then we will close public comment and move on to agenda item number 5, which is our future agenda topics. So this is where, as board members, we can ask for more information on certain or specific items that we would like for Mr. Alvarado to gather to present to us at a later meeting. So if you have questions, thoughts, comments, things you want to see.
I feel the eyeballs, and this will be a series of items. So first off, the raise, it is well received that the teachers have had their decline in the percentage of teachers versus the raise. The raise was in fact across the board. And so obviously admin jobs are going to be a higher percentage detriment to that total. And so what I would like to request, if the board may see it fit, is I would like to see first off the plan for total enrollment versus positions required for such, both from admin and teachers. I know, Ms. Dwyer, you did have something a few years back that it calls for number of each, correct, for enrollment? So number of site administrators per X children, is that correct? And also teachers and such.
That was the staffing ratio that Mr. Alvarado was referring to previously, so that we are currently working on that, updating that with
Okay.
current NRS and state recommendations.
Sure. So what I would like to request is that information, and not necessarily an exact science there, right? There's a lot of things at play for why we have the cost incursion and the lower revenue that we have, whether it's declining enrollment or paying multiple people because of an elimination of a position, or the cost of a lawyer, whatever the case may be. And so along with those, I would like to see if we could get a list of positions and the amount they make, no names attached, but from the top down, including at each school. Because, if teachers have 18, 20, 25 kids per, then certainly that teacher is needed. Unfortunately, with declining enrollment, we don't lose all of them in one sector in order to cut a teaching position. You may lose a kid per class across the district, and then you have what looks like a shortage of children for the number of teachers, but the teachers have only lost one or two each. But if I could get we, as the board, could get the title of each position, the pay, and then also couple that with your and the state's requirement, or even just Douglas County's requirement for each position and the number of students recommended for such. Because the way I see it, being completely transparent, is I'm not sure we have the enrollment at each school to require a principal, multiple vice principals, counselors to the degree we have them. I don't know those answers by any means, but I think that would help paint a picture of where some of this money can be saved, and if someone can step up and provide more of a service for their school. Because back in the day, we had less admin. It's no secret across the board in our country, administration costs have gone significantly higher than any other position at schools. And so that's where I would start. I think when you try to cut money from a business, you always start with managers and mid-level managers, and you keep the workforce that's getting the work done. In this case, unfortunately, I think a lot of that is admin and parts of admin, and the teachers are maybe more required. Certainly, there are teachers also, next step, that can or will retire. I know Superintendent Alvarado has been on that in years past. That would certainly help as a projection, how many teachers we're going to lose for the sake of retirement. Some of those will need to be fulfilled positions again because of the student populace. But you see where I'm going with this. As much information as we can get across the board in those items, I think we could really paint a picture of where, unfortunately, we can cut and where we don't have to cut or can't cut, if that makes any sense.
Yes, we can put that together for you.
And I think to add to what Marcus is saying, I think from superintendent all the way down to playground aides, I think we just need across the board, we need to know how much our district and site and teachers, how much are people making, that we need to look at and say, what can we cut? What can we do without? We don't want to cut teachers. We don't want to cut anybody. Unfortunately, we don't have that luxury. So, Ms. Knighting.
So in dealing with the budget, I think we have two things. We have ways we're going to reduce our expenditures and ways we maybe could enhance our revenue. And I have a whole list, but I'll just do one right now. And it falls under revenue enhancement, and it speaks to we have those three areas where we're consistently pulling funds to the general fund, and one of those is our inclusive education. And a lot of other districts are billing Medicaid for services. Right now, it's my understanding that we are really not. Is that true?
That's a great question, and a very recent topic. So that came up in the meeting with Senator Titus. It also came up at IFC on Monday. I've met with our inclusive ed administrators, Dr. Mayfield and Ms. Kidman Delaney, and we've talked about Medicaid billing. And right now, what's happening at the state level is there's a couple grants that the state is applying for. And if they receive the grant money, they plan on hiring staff to assist rural districts with the Medicaid billing process. So our administration within the inclusive ed department are well aware of the work that it takes and that for Medicaid billing, there is going to be an impact on our service providers. There's a lot of logs that they have to program in a certain system. And then we have to have a doctor sign off on all of that. Currently, Senator Titus does that for Lyon County. We're interested in partnering with a doctor in Douglas County. I can't remember her name. A name was presented to me. At the point we can move forward with Medicaid billing, I will reach out. I have the contact in my office to give the board a figure. Lyon County, a neighboring district, they bring in close to $300,000 in Medicaid billing. And they're a much larger district than us.
And that was going to just be my question. How much money are we talking? Is there any way to go over like last fiscal year if we were billing for those services that are eligible under Medicaid? How much revenue have we lost, and how much could we expect in the future if we get to the point where we can do that? And you're estimating around 300,000?
Well, so Carson City bills just over 200,000. So we're smaller than both of those districts.
Okay.
So I would say in a conservative amount, we'll be closer to $200,000.
Okay, so that still doesn't meet. If I was, what were we still pulling out a general fund for? That was still 1.2 or something million. I mean, it would help, but it would not take care of that problem.
Correct. And in this year's funding from the legislature, they did increase our inclusive education revenue from 4.2 to 5.4 million. So we will see minimal encroachment into our general fund this year because of the increased allocation for inclusive ed.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Miller?
So I went back and did some research back. The last time we were in a similar position was back in 2008 with our housing bubble. That's when talks of closing Kingsbury Middle School happened, and that was consolidated into Zephyr and Watell. At the time, that was a #1 public school in the state with just about 100 students. That's also when they changed Watell to a 4-day week. So I would like to know if we took the 2 middle schools and the high school down here to a 4-day week, what kind of cost savings would that be? Because that would be a year-over-year cost savings if we adjusted a school schedule. The other thing that that was done in 2008 was they eliminated the vice principal positions, and they created a TOSA for the athletic director / dean of students. So that is when it became a elementary school principal and a high school, middle school principal, along with the athletic director. So I would like to see what that ratio would be if we were to do something like that for the elementary schools, or if that would be a feasible idea based on the number of students. I don't want to take away from student supports, but we got to figure out something that's going to be a year-over-year cost savings.
For clarification, so what you're asking for is a cost analysis if we were to change the vice principal position to a teacher on special assignment position.
Correct. Something else that was done during that time period was the school district bought out teacher prep periods to help reduce positions needed. There's some other things that I have. eliminating spending that was previously grant funded. But I don't want to take away from our students. That's why I was asking about that professional development, like how that came about, like if that was grant funded versus general fund. Also looking at how many positions have we added versus at the higher levels versus when people move up and are trained, do we need to keep the position that they were in originally? I'm trying to figure out ways to reduce the overhead that we have incurred. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I have that down.
I would like to have a survey sent out to our community, our teachers, our staff members, and even our students, asking them for their ideas, for their input, because this is not just the final decision rests with the board, but this is not just going to affect the board. This is going to affect our entire community, and we need to make this decision together as a community. And so I think we need buy-in from the community. So I would like to have a survey put forward. I also was wondering if we could get a cost analysis if we had our district and site administrators take furlough days. What would a cost savings be for that, for this year, for next year? If we asked our teachers to take furlough days, I think they overwork already. Everybody does, right? We all overwork. But just trying to come up with places where we can, try to recoup some cost, right?
I just want to clarify. So district and site administrators for furlough days. You don't want consideration for teachers, or you're saying?
I don't like the idea of furloughing teachers, but I think having that as a money, right, a line item of how much would it save the district if we had them take 2 furlough days.
Okay, I can come up with that figure looking at our school calendar. These are questions that our grants office has sent up to the Nevada Department of Ed. And so, Ms. Mitchell, do you mind sharing some information? We do have limitations within our
Right.
calendar.
Yeah, I know that there's certain restrictions within our calendar and within contract, and those are things I don't know, right? So
So at this point,
can you
mid-year,
scoot the microphone
Yeah.
closer? Maybe.
I'll scoot me close. Mid-year, we could furlough up to 2 days, basically. We can't furlough student contact days, which would leave us with teacher work days. The only other option in theory would have been a parent-teacher conference day, but the only one left in spring is only at elementary, and secondary is still in session. In the future, we could write our professional development days as non-student contact days, and they would be able to be furloughed. But the state does allow us to have up to 5 student contact days as professional development. This year we have 4. And because they're classified as student contact, we can't furlough them.
Thank you.
But I'm presenting on the calendar next week. So those are all So all things to keep in mind when we're developing next year's if you want that to look different.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so just to be clear, Ashley said 2 days, possibly, right? Has to be a teacher work day or a parent conference day.
Right.
Parent conference days are really important. We do have a teacher work day at the very end of the school year, and that's a very important day where we have our largest graduation ceremony in the district. So I just want to forewarn the board about that.
Right. I don't want to furlough anybody.
No, but you're asking for information.
Just
so I will
asking for
share it.
information.
Yeah. So
Right.
the
I don't want the teachers
savings,
to think I'm like
yeah,
gung ho. No, I'm
yeah.
not.
The savings for the district is about $250,000 for each furlough day.
Okay.
When we do,
Is that only at the teacher level, or is that at like across everybody doing it
That's
or?
across everybody, but a furlough day, if we have to select one of these days that are without students in the seat,
Mhm.
that would leave out bus drivers, school nutrition. They would not be subject to a furlough day because those are off calendar work days. They're not work days for them. They're
Okay.
off calendar days. So this would only affect administration and teachers and maintenance and 260-day employees.
Okay.
But if you want that dollar figure for all employees, it would be about $250,000 for each day.
Okay.
So that I'll cross off the list for future agenda items because I felt like I gave you enough information regarding that.
Yes, if we furloughed everybody, but, what if we only furloughed our, our district and site administrators? Cause
Okay,
I know
I
that they
can come
work
up with that
more than however many, I don't know how many days they work, but I know they work more than teacher contact days.
Yes, I can come up with that figure for you.
Okay, that would be great.
They work anywhere from 220 to 260, just so you know.
Oh, thank you.
Teacher contract days are 185. Inclusive education teachers and staff are 186. Gives you some perspective.
Thank you. Mr. Zinke.
Yeah, so along the same lines as Melinda was thinking, I don't generally care about other districts and their demographics, but in this case, it might be beneficial as we are in a similar area, location-wise, and a similar cost of living across the counties. With the 4 classifications of students, at-risk, English learners, GATE, and special ed, where do our numbers of their classification meet up with other school districts? In other words, if we're losing out on potentially $200,000 to $300,000 in Medicaid payments, are we classifying our students correctly? Do we have more at risk than we think because we're missing the classification? Do we get the GATE money? I know there was a question there that we are approved, but maybe we're not getting it. And then same with the English learners and so on. If we saw a drastic, a disproportionate amount from Carson City to say Douglas, that wouldn't make a lot of sense. And maybe we're just need to change some of our classification process in order to accumulate some of that money, if that makes sense.
That's a good question. We talked about that as a leadership team last year and really focused on diving into Infinite Campus to make sure we were documenting things appropriately. There's a number of factors associated with designating a student at risk. It used to be if you were low socioeconomic status, you are automatically considered at risk. And so with these 100 factors the state has developed and embedded within the Infinite Campus system, that system determines whether kids are at risk, and then we get our funding from there. When we examined PCFP funding last year, we noticed a dramatic decrease in at-risk funding for the district. And we did notice a discrepancy in gifted and talented funding. This is the extra weighted categories within PCFP in comparison to Carson City. And I believe that dialogue helped with making positive change and ensuring that our registrars are aware and other employees are aware of what information needs to go in certain components of the Infinite Campus system.
Okay, so do we know, and it might be something we have to get, do we know what the other districts, specifically the 2 closest to us, what their numbers were compared to our numbers as far as each of those classifications?
Yeah, that is identified in SB 500. That is the funding bill that the legislature issues out after the biennium. And so you can see the comparison of gifted and talented funds, at-risk funds, English learner funds, and inclusive education funds compared across all districts in the state of Nevada on that one bill.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Once again, that's also dependent on enrollment. So when they do that funding bill, they actually over project enrollment. So what you'll see is that they have our revenue at right around 63 million, and it does not account for our decline. It actually accounts for more students coming into the district.
Okay. You just reminded me of something else. I apologize. And one of our speakers had made a great point that the percentage could be a very small number if the baseline number is very small. And so a 50% increase on $5,000 might only be 2,500, where a 10% increase on 2 million would be 200,000. Can we get a printout of the last however many years with the actual dollar figures of each of those line items?
I have that ready. Do you want that to go to general public, everybody? What would you prefer?
At the request of constituents and being ultra transparent, I would love to see it go to everyone.
Okay, I can actually reattach it to this agenda and provide that as information. I do have to do some edits to it. Once again, the fiscal year 2025 numbers are anticipated based
Sure.
upon a future audit. And the 2026 numbers are projections.
Okay. And then last question, I don't promise, but last question. Where does the money come from for this shortfall? How is Douglas County School District going to pay for the items that we are short?
That's a great question, Marcus. So we've been working with Nevada Department of Ed and also the Department of Taxation. We will know more once they determine our status, our financial status. The one good thing for our district is we currently have zero debt. At the end of the day, what may happen is we may be forced to take out a loan to cover outstanding obligations that we cannot afford with our current revenue.
In taking out a loan, having taken out loans before, those seem to take an exorbitant amount of time to process. Is that something that is currently already in the works, or is there a different thing for schools that there is money readily available from some sort of council or anything like that? How are we going to get it in the time to finish out the school year?
Yeah, that's information I'll have to bring back to you.
Okay.
I don't have that information today.
Thank you.
Ms. Knighting?
So I'm working down where in our budget we are pulling from the general fund just because we're not staying in our budget for these three things. So we are short 1.1 million in transportation. Can you get me the average number of students that ride each individual bus? I mean, are we running some buses that only have 5 students on them? How full are our buses? Also, if we were to consolidate routes, how much savings would that be? How much does it cost for one route on a bus? And if we were able to consolidate, and have we reduced any bus routes since we've had this short, as we've had declining enrollment, have any of the bus routes been decreased as well?
Oh, gosh. I can tell you that yes, over the last 2 years, we've decreased routes. We've merged routes, combined routes where we see that we can. There's still more work to do, and that's information that we will get for you and bring forward. I do know some of the problem is I believe we have approximately 15 students that have their own route right now, just because their plan prescribes that they have a alternate schedule at school than what our students are scheduled. So we have those students for a variety of reasons. There's lots of reasons why. Any students that we have that are in transition, if they move to Carson City, we have to go pick them up in Carson City and bring them to schools, right? That's federal law. So that was the case last year. And that's part of the McKinney-Vento program, saying that right. So there's a variety of reasons, and we can compile them for you. We are actively working on, we've let our transportation director know that we can no longer afford or allow overtime for our drivers. So that's another thing that was happening. We were allowing overtime for field trips or student activities. If you remember, we brought forward those transportation board policy and ARs months ago. That was part of the work that we were doing. We were trying to decrease costs to transportation. So
specifically regarding the new policy with transportation in the 60-mile radius and out of state, is there any way to see if that is being done? I mean, could that be brought back, proof that those are not being billed to our transportation anymore, the ones that have happened since that? Because I know there's been several trips that have met the criteria of over 60 miles out of state. And can you bring back that those were indeed billed to the organization, you know, to the extracurricular organization and not to the transportation fund?
Yep, we could look at that.
We
And-
started that dialogue.
And you're telling me that we have 15 buses that carry one student right now?
Mhm.
And do you have a ballpark of how expensive it is to ride one student on a bus? I mean, how much money each day is that?
I don't know that answer.
I would be curious how much it costs
Hmm.
to, and I guess it would
It'd be a
matter if you were
range.
carrying one student, 50 students, how much is it per day to run a bus?
Yes.
But that's very interesting that we
Mhm.
have 15 that are running one student.
Mhm.
Ms. Miller? So in regards to trustee Knighting's question, I know back in 2020 during COVID up at the lake, we did have a supervisor position that was then reallocated or brought down to the valley. I don't know if that position then was eliminated or not, but I know that it was no longer utilized at the lake. So I know that there has been some stuff since declining enrollment. When my children first started, we had 3 routes up at the lake and we're down to 2. And 2 is sustainable for, in the morning they start off, they leave at 6:30 and they pick up the high school students and then they go back, drop them off, and then they start the elementary school routes. And then in the afternoon, they're all on the same bus. But in regards to Ms. Knighting's question, it would be interesting, how much would a bus cost if we decided to help transport students from the valley to the lake schools? That would help balance out some of that revenue by reallocating revenue from maybe one of the middle schools or DHS up to the lake schools. That'll help bring the lake schools enrollment up. But it would be interesting what that cost of a bus route would be from Foothill to the lake schools in the morning and then again in the afternoon.
And I can answer your question about that position. So that was a coordinator position and we do still have that position. But that position works out of the Valley Yard, transportation yard. That position works, does all of our routing and all of our special routing, and also field trips.
We did try a Kingsbury route, but we tried to add it to the existing route. So I was wondering what it would be to add a 3rd route back in, and it would just literally be from Foothill to Whitell in the morning, and then from Whitell back to Foothill in the afternoon. It wouldn't coincide with our existing routes.
So we did try that last year and I think the student lasted 1 week. Because it was such a long day because of that 4-day schedule up at Whitell. So it's a super long day for that student to have to get on the bus and then come back down. Anyways, I think that maybe the schedule was just too much. I think we could look at, we will look at that. We'd have to add a driver and a route, right? Or would it be, could we keep a bus in the valley? Because right now we keep both of our buses up at the lake. And so could we keep a bus in the valley? That bus starts at the bottom of Foothill and moves up, right? So we can look at some options and the cost of those options.
I appreciate that because I think that would help increase the enrollment at the lake schools. It would then reduce that per pupil spending at the lake schools. But it would also then offer an opportunity for our valley students who would enjoy that more small school atmosphere that Whitell has to offer. I think the transportation is a huge deterrent for that. And I think when we tried it last year, it was then tacked onto the regular route. So yes, it made it very long because they were sitting on the bus at 5:45 in the morning, doing the Kingsbury route and then getting to school. And then at the end of the day, doing the Kingsbury route, then coming back down. Whereas if we had a bus designated for a dozen families or 20 students, whatever that looks like, literally just pick up at Foothill, take it to Watell. And then at the end of the day, pick up at Watell and then come back down. Now, that doesn't mean that that driver, I don't know how this would work, but it could possibly mean that that driver would then be able to pick up maybe an elementary school route down here, because obviously they're going to go from down here to the lake, back down, maybe then pick up a route down here. And then at the end of the day, I don't know what that would look like though, because obviously Watell gets out at the same time that elementary schools get out down in the valley. And that might even change if we looked at a 4-day school week for our 2 middle schools and our high school down here as well. So
I think that is a very, that could be a topic of a whole special board meeting. And we could have our transportation director here to speak to you about the ins and outs. And I think it, as well as like inclusive education, that could be also a whole special meeting, right? To talk about the ins and outs of those things as well. So, we will prepare all of these things for you, but I would suggest having a meeting where they could, the director could be present to speak to and answer questions specifically.
I appreciate that, because I think we just need to have some open dialogue on what a cost looks like and how to either minimize a cost. I mean, I've tried to work with Tahoe Transportation with Sean on getting a shuttle and things like that. And it just doesn't align with our school day, unfortunately. They leave the transportation district and come down instead of starting down here and going up. We're trying to work with the community in different aspects too. So it'd be nice to see what a cost would be from the school district for that. Because I think that would help balance out our 2 high schools as well.
Doesn't that just add a cost to the district overall? So I know that the optic would make it look like Watell and the schools up there are then not as much per pupil, but it's now adding a bus route to the district overall. So it would incur a cost. It would be more cost. So at the risk of just an optic, I would rather not incur more costs to the school district.
But what if those kids decided to leave instead of staying at Douglas High? No, I'm playing devil's advocate, and I'm just trying to figure out how to keep our students in our school district.
Well, we could play what ifs all the time, and you acknowledge that, but if you had a set kid that wanted to go to school that doesn't now, then there would be room for a discussion about it, right? Because then you have a reason to increase the costs, because you might have a cost offset in the new enrollment. But if it's just current kids that are already going into our school district, you're just changing the optic of the cost and incurring a greater cost at the route and the driver for the kids that are already in the district. So you would need to have a justification of kids that are not in the district currently in order to justify the bus route to Tahoe, at the understanding that they're only going to school because they want to go to Watell. Otherwise, they're not going to join the district. Right?
No, that makes sense, but it would be nice to see what that cost would look like. So then at least we have that information. I'm just trying to look at all options that we can to increase our enrollment overall. I don't want kids to leave. I've talked with parents, and there's parents out there that they don't want their kids at DHS. They don't want them there for whatever reasons, but they'd love to go to Watell, but they can't get them up to the lake. So I'm trying to figure out, how do we keep that revenue high with a minimal amount of cost? It's just the revenue cost benefit. I would like to see what that cost is. If it doesn't outweigh the benefit, then at least we've looked at that.
Yeah, one thing that the AGPM office has pulled is zoned Watell High School students who are attending Douglas High School on a variance. We will take a look at it the opposite direction. But in the 24-25 school year, there were 8 zoned Watell students that attended DHS. 23-24, there were 10 students. 22-23, there were 11 students. 21-22, since I've been going back 4 school years, there was 9 students. So roughly 10% of the Wattell population is on variance to Douglas High School. Going the opposite direction.
Did you have something more you wanted to say, Ms. Knighting? So not to bring up something that we don't want to talk about. We don't want to talk about closing schools. However, I don't think anything is off the table at this point. I think we need to look at all our options. And so I think we need to look at, we have the cost per student per school. But what is the cost if we combine schools? Because, you know, we're losing some, but we're not just moving student, like we have to move teachers. It's going to affect our administration. It's going to cost, you know, I mean, not cost, it's going to affect our school nutrition program. It's going to affect our transportation. So what does that cost look like if we combine some of our elementary schools, possibly our middle school? I don't really want to do that. I don't want to combine any of our schools. So, but we need to know what those costs look like moving forward. So I think that's something that we need to look at. Your list is getting long.
It is, and I think it's just about full here.
I have something.
And we want all this at next week's board meeting. I'm just saying.
All right.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
You would
The
not do
things that we have already prepared, we will put on the agenda. Remember, we're trying to post agendas on Friday.
Yeah.
At the very latest, we
Yeah,
have to
no,
post next week's agenda on Monday by
Right.
8. So if there's things that we feel we can quickly prepare over the weekend,
Mhm.
I will do so. And if we have to delay our agenda to Monday at 8, then we'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I know that some of these things are going to take time,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So
Time and manpower.
right.
Yeah.
And we don't want to,
Or woman power, I should say too, right?
I just don't think anything's off the table at this point. So.
So I wanted to ask about Aspire. I know that Western College is, Nevada College is taking that site back. Where are those students and teachers and staff going? And what is the cost of that? And is it more or less? Are we saving money? Is it costing us more?
It's a good question. Currently, our lease agreement with WNC, we pay $10,000 a month to lease the Buckeye facility. And our plan is to relocate the whole entire school program to the Heritage Building. Recently, our grants department, Ms. Mitchell, went out for a historic building preservation grant, in which we're hoping to modernize that building and make it more suitable for a high school. And so we plan on the logistical planning of that work to happen late January, early February, so that way we can relocate by the end of June, because we need to be out of that building by the end of June. So we will save the $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year in lease, but we are going to need to utilize some capital improvement funds and renovate the Heritage Building.
Thank you.
Ms. Knighting.
This is my last thing because you took what is the savings of a consolidation? But my last thing is to hit on the last of the three, the benefits. Can we get a cost comparison to the neighboring districts of what they spend per employee as opposed to what we spend per employee? I believe we're at $925-ish at this point. Is that comparable to other districts around us?
And we actually have that information. It's already done.
Excellent.
Yes, so we could bring that forward next week.
That will be perfect.
yeah,
Thank you so
for
much.
sure.
Based on our last meeting and the findings of the Attorney General on the open meeting law violation in the material changes of the contract for the previous attorney, what are the odds, or what is the likelihood that we try to recoup some of the money spent to Joey Gilbert, both as a finding materially about a contract being incorrect and therefore an open meeting law violation, and also the poor advice given to the board at the cost of a writ that was significantly more than the reported 170.
Yeah, so we can set up a private legal briefing, a closed session meeting for the board to receive legal guidance on the next steps in that process, if that is a direction the board chooses to take. I don't think that's a decision we can make right now in the moment. We have no action item here today. But I appreciate, you bringing that to everybody's attention, and I can't give you a definitive answer on that today.
Sure, I think it should be something explored with legal for the sake of, obviously, we don't have a crystal ball and there are always unintended consequences, but probability, maybe something along those lines, likelihood, even desire to do so from legal, anything along those lines would be helpful.
Will do.
Any other thoughts or things that we're asking for a lot of information. We have some really
we're starting early.
hard decisions to make. These are not decisions that any of us want, including administration, right? Or teachers. Like, we don't want to nobody wants to make these decisions. So gathering as much information as we can gather so we can make the best decision for our students and for our families and for our staff members. I think it's very important. So.
And can I just add, I think it will look good if we can show when you go to this meeting that we are projection negative 5 million. And here is our plan with the exact costs that we've gone through of where we're going to get that $5 million. I mean, I think it's important that we have the plan. And I think that's why we're asking for the dollar amounts of these things, because we need to come up with $5 million before we go in front of them, or we're not going to look like we have a plan.
Correct.
Is it just 5 million that we need to recoup, or do we need to look at increasing that so that we can build back our ending fund balance and our 1%?
So we have to reach further than that amount because we have to plan for declining enrollment, loss of revenue for next year.
Mhm.
We're not sure if any changes will happen in special session.
Right.
As soon as special session is done, we may find out there are changes to the declining enrollment provision.
Mhm.
And so that answers your question. We have to go further than that.
Do we know what that amount is?
I would estimate 7.25 to 7.5 million at this time, but I don't want to give you a hard number until after the audit findings, and then additional meeting with the auditor about this year. He's not going to audit us in the middle of a year,
Right.
but I do want to do a quick comparison of where our expenditures are at this point in comparison to last year. So
Right. Now, just a quick question. On that audit, is that something that we as a district pay for and have paid for over the last many years that we've been doing this?
we're one of the few districts in Nevada that's had an annual audit. It's
Mhm.
not required. It is a recommendation and a suggestion, and we've had an audit from a neutral auditor, not affiliated with the district, on an annual basis. So when we did the 10-year general fund analysis, we took everything from the actuals from those audit reports. So we know that they're good numbers, right?
Right.
They're not guesses, they're actuals.
Okay. How much does that cost our district?
I
to do
don't
an
have
audit?
the cost for the audit, but I can give you that.
Just curious. Obviously, what money well spent because we're finding problems. So, all right. Any further questions, thoughts, comments, requests? Go for it, Ms. Miller.
So when I brought up earlier about the TOSA and the vice principal thing, I found an article, it was a 17-to-1 teacher versus administration ratio. So it'd be interesting to see where we're at for the elementary schools based upon that. Are you aware of that ratio? No? Okay.
I have been researching ratios and Senate bills and NRS for days and days. That is not one I've come across. I have not seen any ratios in Nevada or suggested ratios in Nevada for administrators to pupil. But
Okay.
I will
I
keep
will send
digging
it.
and keep looking. Yes, please share
Send
it.
you the links that I have.
Yes.
Yeah, so it says the bill requires 17 teachers for every one administrator within the school district to prioritize filing classroom based upon before non-classroom based positions.
Okay.
So I'll send you that information.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, sometimes they put recommendations in those bills. I can tell you, we can't afford that staffing ratio. We just can't.
I didn't know if we were over it or if we were under it. That was going to be my question in regards to that putting forward that like TOSA type position. So I'm just trying to figure out how we can move forward. I think we have to look at a lot of different areas to get to the number that we need to do. It's not going to be just one area, just not just like administration or district office or, you know, transportation. It's going to be it's going to be pulling from a lot of areas from that. I think we have to look at also what we consider a luxury item and remove that from our expenses.
And everyone will have different viewpoints on luxury items. So going back to, our strategic plan and what we've identified as our priorities, that was one of the intentions for prioritizing that document. So earlier I did share, CTE costs have gone up, vocational costs have gone up. That's a priority of the district, right? And as we examine the data within the district, we're noticing more students completing pathways within CTE and less students reaching for that advanced diploma. So those are some things I can point out as well as it relates to our strategic plan.
All right, anything else? Do you have anything, Susan? Okay. Anything else? Okay. All right, well, I think we've given you quite the long list of things to repair. Really appreciate the work that you and our district staff are doing and all in helping to come up with solutions. So, if that is it, we do not have any further agenda items and this meeting is adjourned.